It was the kind of night when the city lights looked blurred through sheets of rain, a storm that seemed to mirror the chaos inside broken souls, and on the rooftop of a high-rise stood a young pregnant girl in a soaked white dress, barefoot and trembling, her hand clutching her swollen belly while her eyes brimmed with hopeless tears, and as the cold wind whipped around her fragile figure, she took a step closer to the ledge, whispering to herself that maybe this was the only way to silence the pain. But just as her foot slipped dangerously close to the edge, a desperate voice cut through the storm, deep and commanding yet filled with fear, "Don't jump." And from the shadows of the rooftop emerged a man in a drenched suit, his black coat heavy with rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his chest heaving as if he had just sprinted against fate itself. And this man was not just anyone but a once powerful CEO, the kind who used to be splashed across magazines with headlines calling him a visionary, yet tonight he looked nothing like that image, for his company had collapsed under betrayal, his friends had abandoned him, and he was drowning in debt, his name dragged through mud, his pride shattered, and while the world mocked him as a failure, inside he carried scars no one saw. But despite his own brokenness, he couldn't let this girl end her life, not when he saw the curve of her belly that promised a future yet to come, not when he felt in her despair a mirror of his own, and he stepped forward carefully, his voice trembling yet steady enough to reach her heart. "Please, don't do this. Whatever pain you're carrying, it doesn't have to end like this." But she shook her head violently, rainwater and tears mixing down her face, her voice cracked and defeated. "You don't understand. I have nothing, no one, and this child will only suffer because of me." And her words cut him deeper than he expected, because he too had felt that same emptiness, the suffocating loneliness of losing everything you loved. And before he could stop himself, he lunged forward, his hand shooting out just as her knees buckled from exhaustion, and his fingers closed tightly around her wrist, pulling her back from the abyss with a strength born not of muscles but of sheer desperation. And in that moment their eyes locked, hers wide with shock, his burning with determination, and the storm seemed to fade around them as time froze, as if fate itself held its breath to witness this meeting. And though she struggled weakly, whispering, "Let me go, I can't, I don't deserve to be saved," he pulled her harder, his voice raw and breaking. "No, you don't get to decide that tonight, not when there's a life inside you, not when I know exactly how it feels to stand on that edge, wanting to disappear." And with that confession the girl's resistance collapsed, her body trembling as she stumbled into his arms, clutching his soaked shirt as sobs racked through her, and he held her tightly, shielding her from the storm though he himself was drenched, and together they sank to the wet rooftop floor, two shattered souls clinging to each other as the city roared beneath them, unaware that something extraordinary had just begun above their glittering lights. And as the man caught his breath, his heart racing, he couldn't stop the flood of questions. Who was this girl? Why was she on that rooftop? What pain had driven her to such despair? Yet he didn't ask, not yet, because in that moment he knew the only thing that mattered was that she was alive. And as he guided her gently down the stairwell into the building's dimly lit corridor, his own thoughts battled fiercely inside him, for he was a man who had lost everything, yet tonight he had saved something priceless, and he had no idea that in saving her he had unknowingly saved himself. For this girl carried a truth that would change everything, a truth that tied their fates in ways he could never have imagined.